Friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, our program today is the product of a collaborative effort between Trans-Arab Research Institute, a think tank registered in the state of Massachusetts, and Arabic Hour. The subject of the program is the life and contributions of Dr. Fadle Naqib. Dr. Naqib was Professor Emeritus in the Department of Economics at the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. He specialized in mathematical economics and the economics of the Middle East, especially the economics of Palestinian occupied territories, the economics of Israel, and in Arab development. He was an eminent thinker and left a good heritage in his areas of interest. Myself and my two colleagues, Dr. Isam Naqib and Dr. Atif Kubursi, will discuss the life and contributions of Fadle Naqib. Here is a short biographical note of the three discussants. Isam Mustafa Naqib. Isam is the elder brother of Fadle Naqib. He was born in Safed, Palestine. He received in '53 a Bachelor of Science degree in physics, maths, and chemistry from the Syrian University in Damascus, a master's in cosmic ray physics in 1957, and a PhD in nuclear structure physics in 1962, both from the University of Washington in Seattle, Washington, the US. Isam was involved in teaching and research at Florida State University, Liverpool University, UK Atomic Energy Research Establishment at Harwell, and Kuwait University, with commensurate volume of publications in leading international journals in nuclear physics. He was appointed in the course of his academic service at Kuwait University as chair of the physics department, followed by 4 years as the first dean of graduate studies and university vice president for research. It was an intensive period of structural academic reform at the university, where he oversaw the dismantling of an old, archaic, college-centric system of supervising graduate students and awarding graduate degrees. A similar reform procedure was carried out in the field of research, where the dual support principle was adopted. Following the invasion of Kuwait in 1990, Isam moved with his family to Oxford, UK. His focus became managing original projects aimed at higher educational reform in the Arab region. The most notable such project was the UNDP project for the assessment and enhancement of the quality of undergraduate education in Arab universities. It lasted 8 years, during which the quality of programs and students' performance was assessed in 36 leading universities in 14 Arab countries. The last such regional activity was overseeing the establishment of the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies in Qatar. He retired in January 2015. Dr. Atif Kubursi. Atif is Emeritus Professor of Economics at McMaster University and Adjunct Professor with the Faculty of the Environment and Urban College at York University. He also served as the Acting Executive Secretary and Under Secretary General of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, ESCWA, from 2006 to 2008. He received in '63 a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from the American University of Beirut, a Master of Science in 1966, and a PhD in 1969 in economics, both from Purdue University, USA. Atif has published 13 books and has 250 articles. He taught economics at Purdue University, Lafayette, Indiana, and St. Joseph College in Collegeville, Indiana. In 1975, he was a visiting scholar at Cambridge University in the UK and joined Harvard University Institute of Social and Economic Policy as a fellow from 1989 to 1999. My short bio: Hani Faris is Professor of Political Science. He served on the faculty of various academic institutions, including the Political Science Department at Kuwait University, the School of International Service at the American University in Washington, D.C., the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Harvard University, the Department of Political Science, and the Institute of Islamic Studies at McGill University, and the History Department at Simon Fraser University. Presently, he is adjunct professor in the Department of Political Science and the faculty associate in the Institute of Asian Research at the University of British Columbia. Among the books Dr. Faris has authored, co-authored, and edited are Sectarian Conflict in the Modern History of Lebanon, Beyond the Lebanese Civil War, U.S. Policy in the Middle East, The Arab Position on the Israeli Invasion of Lebanon, Arab Nationalism and the Future of the Arab World, The One-State Solution to the Arab-Israeli Conflict, A Country for All Its Citizens, and Failure of the Two-State Solution, The Prospects of One State in the Israel-Palestine Conflict. He has written more than 50 book chapters and articles in professional journals on such topics as Arab politics, Arab nationalism, the Middle East in world politics, Lebanese politics and institutions, history of the Palestinian issue, Zionism, and Third World development. I have served as academic vice dean for graduate studies at Kuwait University, president of the Association of Arab American University Graduates, advisor to the Canadian Institute for International Peace and Security, member of the Board of Editors of Arab Studies Quarterly, member of the Board of Editors of Contemporary Arab Affairs, policy advisor to the Palestinian Policy Network, Al-Shabaka, and president of the Board of Directors of Trans-Arab Research Institute. In the 8th century BC, Homer, the Greek author of the Iliad, composed the Odyssey, an epic poem that relates to the figure of Odysseus, king of the island of Ithaca, a name also known in the Latin alternative as Ulysses, and his 10 years long and daunting journey at the end of the Trojan War back to his homeland in Ithaca. Much like Odysseus, the life of Fadle Naqib was a journey whose goal was to return to Safad and his homeland, Palestine. Fadel, a Palestinian Odysseus born in the Palestinian city of Safad on the 26th of April 1938, spent 7 years of his life recording his life story, which he titled The Book of Safad. The memoir was finished in March 24. The manuscript is 26 chapters, has 500,000 words, which make up over 2,000 pages. Alas, unlike the central figure in the Odyssey, Fadel reached the end of his life journey before his return to Safad. He passed away on April 26, 2025. This session will cover 3 topics. The first has to do with Fadel's early life in Safad, and then Damascus, and will be handled by Isam, his elder brother. He will give us his recollections of how Fadel reacted to events that led to the Palestinian Nakba or catastrophe. He will also explain how the cultural and political currents in Syrian society at the time molded Fadel's personality. Isam and myself will review Fadel's experiences in the US and Canada, how he faced up to the challenges he encountered and excelled in the profession he chose. The second topic will be about Fadel the economist. It will be handled by Atif, who will recount the work the two of them did together. Atif will also explain what distinguishes Fadel as an economist from others. That will include a reference to Fadel's writings and teachings. I'll be handling the third topic, which will deal with Fadel's ideological beliefs, his values, and his personality. The first speaker will be Dr. Isam Naqib. He's the elder brother of Fadel al-Naqib. Isam will give us a description of the early life of Fadel when he was a child and when he was youthful in both Safad, Palestine, and in Damascus, Syria. Please go ahead, Isam.
Thank you, Hani. Thank you. It's really it's difficult to talk about early childhood, those years, without talking about the events that were, affecting and intertwined with our lives there. So one has to talk about the background and talk about childhood at the same time. I think the earliest conversation I had with Fadel, you see, we are a family of 6. Boy, Usama, followed by Lamis, girl, followed by me as boy, followed by Asma as girl, followed by Fadel as boy, followed by Rabia. So the interaction of daily life between Fadel will be with his sister and with his cousin Zakaria and so on. But yet, it was really the first conversation I had with Fadel was when he was about 9. That was in 1945. And at that year, with the war over, suddenly it became lots of meetings in Safad and all the cities of Palestine, asking for the independence and calling on Britain to fulfill its white paper promise and give us independence there and stop the immigration as really was stipulated in the white paper. And Fadel, he was young, he was 7, and he started asking me why. What's going on? I was the closest thing to him, because everybody is busy. And I explained it to him, and I told him about the background, how the 36, 39 the Thawra al-Arabiya al-Kubra revolution, how they took all our arms and all our things, but now with the Arab League coming, and they will promise that they will, make us an independent country, and they will give us arms and so on. And I told them about the broken promises of the First World War and all that made him, think and so on. But at the same time, he was a boy. He was very eager to know many things. And in those days, we were really having a very, very happy life in Safad. We didn't know what was written for us. And I remember distinctly how my father used to receive in our house all the people in the summer, all the people Safad who went to Jerusalem and who are all educated people from England and so on. They're coming back to Safad for the summer. And they used to meet in our house. And I used to listen to them talk about everything, so philosophy, history, Arabic language, poetry, and so on. And I was listening very carefully because I thought this is something I can learn from. But more interested than me was Fadel. Fadel was always there. He was the always first one to open the door for them. And while I was waiting for them to ask me questions. If they ask me questions, I will just answer. He will just venture on his own and interfere and make questions and answers and so on. And they loved that. They loved that. He was not only that, he was able to imitate the people there. He read their personality and imitate people and so on. And that was really something. That was really something. And we had in that time we had also the cultural club where every 2 weeks in the summer somebody will come and give a lecture, sit down on the table and so on, and there will be answers and questions and so on. And he used to go there also with his father, always going with his father, and he liked that. So when he came at home, I said, why don't I give you the same thing? So I arranged the table and so on and so on. And he gave a lecture to the house here, to our house, and everybody was happy and so on. What I want to say is that he found his voice and the courage to express his view from that early age. I haven't taken too much time.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
One more thing I want to say. One more thing. After only 2 weeks ago, I had the chance to look at his memoirs, which are really what you call magnum opus or something. It's huge. And I read something about Safad there, his memories of Safad when he was a child. And it was amazing. He remembers everything about our life there, about those meetings with the people there, the visitors of my father. And he will describe every one of them in such detail. They become alive. He described our life there, how he went to Jerusalem, how he went to the school, how we were sitting in Ramadan, eating. It just, I felt tears welling up in my eyes, when I read that, And that's really just to give you an idea about his personality before we left.
It's funny too, Dr. Isam, that Fadel left Safar, but it never left him. I mean, his whole research, his whole contribution has always been centered around the Palestinian cause, about the Palestinian people, about their welfare, about their dignity and integrity. And to a great extent, it defined him. So Safar has been a defining character.
Exactly. And really it's surprising that the best person who described what Safad was, how our life was in Safad, described everything about Safad, is a 10 years old boy, 10 years old child. I think what he wrote about Safad is the best that would ever, about our life, not just Safad, but our life there, including going to Jerusalem with his father, going to Haifa with his father and seeing the sea and so on. So there you are. That's our life. Yeah.
Isam, can you move to the next stage in the early life of Fadel?
Yeah, the next stage also, he was still a child. And he went there and we joined the private school, the university. Syria was at that time very just democratic country, multi-party system, parliamentary. Nobody was unreachable, very open society. And they really gave us everything we wanted. You feel the people there felt guilty that what happened to us and their government didn't do enough. So they treated us exactly as equal. So I joined I joined a private school to do my baccalaureate, to finish my baccalaureate. And it was all a voucher by the government. I don't have to pay anything. And the same thing with Fadel. But Fadel, he was finished Palestine in the 4th grade, and he finished only one term. So said, this year, if you will go to the 5th grade, that's a certificate. They had a degree, an exam. You will fail. He refused. He said, no, if I fail, I will fail. So he went, and he got very high marks. He got very high marks there. And what he did then, he could carry on with the same school because it's all paid by the government. But he thought that the Tajhiz al-Ula, which is the first preparatories, was the best. So he took his marks and credentials and he went there by himself without telling anybody. He went there and he just stood in line to carrying his paper, and in front of him was a father and a boy, and the father was arguing with the admission officer there about, admission, and the admission officer was not accepting to admit his son to the school. So he called Fadel. Fadel came in. He gave him the papers, and he stamped them with admission there. And the man said, "But why? Why not my son?" He said, look at this and look at this, And Fadel did that on his own. He didn't ask anybody. So he got admission to the best secondary school in all Syria on his own without consulting anybody. That shows you the kind of personality he has, Also in his childhood, his younger sister Rabia tells me that in Damascus, he used to take her with his friend, Yusuf Awad, take her to the cinema, buy her ice cream. So because she had lots of money taken from all the members of the family. He takes money, but he spends it. She doesn't spend it. So he takes her with his friend, Yusuf Awad, and she gives him extra money. And you know what he does spend money? Buying books.
Wow.
He told me all what he did was buying books. And that was the real love of his life, literature. It started from that age. And he formed groups, even when he was 15 or 16. He formed groups about reading, all translated to Arabic, and to reading and talking to each other and so on and so forth. And that was the nucleus of the group that formerly was joined by Ghassan Kanafani and so on later on in a few years' time. What else do you want to know? Then we go to school in Tajhiz. Tajhiz, he was just interested not in every subject, only subjects that he was interested in Arabic language. He was interested in math. He discovered from that age that he loves math. And he used to come to me sometimes with very difficult questions, and we sit down and solve them together. Because you see, there, even after I graduated from the university, I worked 2 years as a teacher of secondary school in the UNRWA schools for Palestinians. I worked there. So all this time I was there. And he used to come to me and then once I think he did a project, they asked him to do a social project. And he went himself, went to the refugee camp. And he went there several times and did studies with data and statistics. And when I saw it, I was surprised. There was method. There was method there and conclusion. And it was published for him. The school published it for him. So this is he did what he liked. He didn't do everything. He did only what he liked. Yeah.
That love of math has stayed with him.
That was one of the things. The other one is literature.
Yes.
They started from then, you see. Literature and math. Yeah.
And these are two disparate fields. It's amazing how Fadle has always been able to reconcile and use both. I mean, as good a mathematician, good with numbers, good with facts, he was also good with language, good with the beauty of your language.
Oh, literature and language to him was without it, he couldn't live. Yeah. Fadle. Reading, always books, always reading. Yeah.
During that stage of his life in Damascus, he had another field of activity, which was in politics. Can you tell us something about that?
Fadel got involved in politics. It was, in fact, in Damascus. with the Arab nationalist movement. And that's such an important phase in his life because it affected all his life afterwards. But to me, it was me who started the involvement with the nationalist movement. And shortly after, Fadel came on. So here's what because of the importance of that period in all our lives, I have to go through it following the sequence of memories that I have, the logic I have in my head. That's the only way I can do it. I didn't have anything written or anything. And to do that, I have first to talk about my involvement, and then I have to talk about my testimony to my experience working with them, although it was only for 1 year. And then I concentrate on Fadel. Now, to start with my experience, when I graduated in 53, in the spring of 53, in the summer of 53, the university students, the Palestinian students at the Syrian University made a union, and they chose me or elect me to be the head of the executive committee or the chief of that. Maybe because being a graduate student, I have more time on my I have more time on to spend with them and so on. And also, as a teacher at the secondary school, I was teaching at the secondary school for 2 years. At the Syrian secondary school, I also got involved in the formation of a union of UNRWA teachers there. And because I was teaching at the secondary school for girls and for boys and for girls, but there were so many schools at the medium and the lower levels. And the students, the teachers, men and women were a huge number. I mean, they would fill a big hall with people standing at the door and so on. So I got involved in both these things. I found myself acting as a de facto spokesman for the union. And between the two of us, we did two major events. One of them is the Balfour Declaration. We staged a big demonstration. We started from our school, from the secondary school for boys, which I was in. And I was there, I read the big statement and so on. And then we started the demonstration, which went all through Damascus streets, big, obviously joined by others, of course, joined by all the teachers. The other activity we did was, as a union of students of the university, we launched a campaign to collect funds for the Algerian Revolution. We just started that autumn. And we from all the students and teachers in Damascus and Homs there. And we collected a sum which is very modest, but by the currency of that time, so it was respectable, and it was symbolic. And we went there, and I was there with my colleagues at the union, and we handed over to the representative of the Algerian Revolution in Damascus, and that made some headlines and so on. So we were known. We became known, you see. And a few days later, I received a call from a teacher, Asma Muwakka, who was a AUB graduate, and she owned a school, a secondary school for girls there. And she invited me to come with my colleagues to her house for a discussion. So I went there with 2 or 3 of my colleagues a couple of times, and we discussed things and so on. I had many questions at that time, really. I wanted to know, how do we go forward, as Palestinians, as Syrians, and so on and so forth. Because at that time, we were in times of hope. There's something things became different all of a sudden. Nasser already has made his effect in the region. He became known because he forced the British to leave, to all the British forces, occupation forces, to leave Egypt as well as the Suez Canal, just by some guerrilla work and so on, and some tough negotiations. Also, the Russians, the Soviet Union got over the trauma of the Stalinism and started opening up collective leadership there and declaring themselves in support of all Asian and African people to get rid of the colonies, so offering a counterbalance to the domination of the America and the West. And the third thing, of course, was the Algerian Revolution, which took everybody by surprise. It was such a boost to our morale, unbelievable at that time. So all these things, but my question was, how do we go forward? What kind of organization do we form? Do we follow the communist model? Do we follow the Islamic model or something? All these things don't work for us, even the Ba'ath Party. Because the Ba'athists were actually an opposition party. They don't run the government. And these were the questions that were troubling me. Where does democracy come in? And so Asma Muwakka, she said, after 2 meetings there, she called me and said, come and see me, come and meet somebody at my house at 7 o'clock. I remember exactly. He probably will answer your question. And I waited, and in fact, I went 10 minutes earlier. He came really, 7 o'clock sharp, very impressive person. He was probably only 5 years young. I think he was 4 or 5 years older than me. But he was really impressive. Such charisma, such belief, you know. When I talked with him, we spent for a whole hour, 4 hours discussing. And his answer to my central question is that we leave our options open. This is something we could discuss later. But now we have to concentrate on moving forward. Obviously, Palestine was in his his main focus. And I felt that is by itself an answer to my question. So after a couple of days, Asma Muwakka called me again, and she said, he invites Hakim. Hakim invites you to see him in Al-Rai, which is a 4th floor of the Hajjar building, which is close to our house. So I went there afternoon. I met him, very pleasant, and noticed that with him was Hani al-Hindi, who seems to be the brain trust of his people. And there were so many people, all of them students from the AUB. And I wondered what was the occasion. It turned out that because of there were big demonstrations against the Baghdad Pact. Many of the AUB students who believe in the Arab nationalism, and there were a lot of them, some of them, they were caught in the demonstration. There were some accidents that happened at the demonstration by chance. And so the AUB expelled all of them. All students, some in the junior level, sophomore level, senior level, I found them all there. Most of them young people there. So it turned out that these people coming in, and Hakim and Wadi Haddad, who were acting as doctors in refugee camp in Jordan, they decided to come together and work on Al-Rai. So their, ostensibly, or the legal reason was to just issue a weekly magazine called Al-Rai. And that was an experience by itself, because it was like the whole week was just like a workshop. Everybody working, everybody doing something there. And I recognized there from the group Adnan Faraj, who I knew from Palestine. He was really full-time there, sitting in that fourth floor apartment. Just as you enter, sitting there, he's running the daily work of the Al-Rai from 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning till about 5 or 6 in the evening. And then he comes the second day. There was Ghassan Mahasni. There was, I think, Hakam Darwazi, if I remember. There was Ghassan Barazi and others. So gradually, by accident, I got involved in the writing, started first from writing few columns and so on, and found myself that I really could write. I can't write political analysis and so on. And that gave me more, stature in the group. They became more dependent on me. And the more dependent on me, I became more dedicated. It becomes like an obsession. You want to serve in any way you can. They started meeting in our house. Because the Ra'i comes in the early morning of Monday. The Hakim and others will be with the press working all night just to make sure it comes on time on the early Monday. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they will come to our house, which is a flat actually, in Damascus, about 10 or 12 of them, to review the Ra'i and see everybody will criticize it positively or negatively, each item there. And there was no wasting of time, just using Grover's rules. Yes, no, you say what you want, you carry on and you move on. And actually, it was not just to Ra'i, really. Ra'i was really the vehicle, I think. It was to discuss our views and develop our ideas and so on. And that I loved. I love because here you have so many such educated people, not bound by party rules or obedience or discipline or something, but just because they are joined by one simple ideas together. And I love that, and I stayed with that all my life. Now, I think I said all what I want to say about my involvement. Now, I want to move to, I want to just mention one thing, that as we go back all the way to the demonstrations in Damascus and the campaign for Algeria and so on, Ghassan Kanafani was about 4 years younger than me. He was the second year or first year of university, still young. But he was a teacher also, junior teacher in the school I was teaching in. So I came to know him. And he has such a pleasant, such a sharp mind and, artistic. You feel he's an artist there. And we became very good friends. And then at one time in a Ra'i, we needed somebody who can do some caricatures or drawing, I forgot. And we remember that he does that with his students. So we called him and he did that so easily and so on. And we started to discuss again and again. So that's my relation with Ghassan. Now we come to Fadel. Fadel first came to when he was about, I think, 16 or so, just shortly after he has his own groups, Fadel. Groups who distribute pamphlets, and they always work for Palestine. Yeah. The groups of about 4 or 5 or 6, I don't know. I have no idea. I think in his memoirs he called them the party. They called it the party. Yeah. And during the meetings, when the people were, coming in or going out from our meetings, they came across Fadel. And they were Ghassan and Asma Waqqa. They were interested in distributing their pamphlet, Afar, which is retribution or revenge or something. Very elegant, small one, about Palestinians being shot at the borders between Israel and the West Bank. The wound of the Nakba was still fresh. People there, the farmers, villagers, they go down in the night to take some of the things that they left behind in their homes, or to take some olives or some grapes or something. It is their own farms, and they will be shot at by the Israelis, and they were called not terrorists yet. They called them troublemakers, mukharribin. There. So all this was in this nashra, this pamphlet, and so they joined forces, and Fadel took over that part of distributing the thing and so on. That was at the lower field level. And then Fadel became more involved in a big way, because he has this group called the Literature and Life Group, رابطة الأدب والحياة there. And he and Bilal Hassan and Ahmed Khalifi, and later joined by Ghassan, they joined together. And that was mostly after I left. But they really got all involved in the Arab nationalist movement. They all went in a very big way. And they sacrificed, and in the end, they devoted all their lives to it. I mean, if you take Ahmed Khalifa, for example, Ahmed Khalifa was sent by the movement to Jerusalem. That was before the 67 war, of course, to do something, and they caught him. They took him and jailed him for 2 years. And there he learned Hebrew. And when he came out, he started, when his work, we worked with the Shu'un Palestiniya, the Palestinian Studies, Journal of Palestinian Studies, he issued the weekly, he himself doing the translation of Hebrew press. Every day of the week, 5 days a week, he will just issue, the Nashra will come, Al-Nashra. And I still use it up till now. And Fadel used to use it all the time. Everybody who wants to know what's going on, he was using. And then Bilal, of course, came and then Ahmed, of course, he was one of the pillars on which the Palestinian, the Journal of Palestinian Studies was, he probably was, doing maybe 30-40% of the work to keep it going, especially in the beginning, And Bilal Hassan, of course, he became a big journalist and well-known. So all of them became well-known. And Fadel, of course, well-known. Ghassan, of course, Ghassan became famous because Ghassan wrote books which are, say, not more than 7 or 8 books because he didn't live long. But he wrote books like Returning to Haifa or Returning to Haifa or Men in the Sun, Men Under the Sun. And Saad's mother, Saad. But the first 2, at least, they was translated into 40, 50 languages. 40, 50 languages. And he became very close to Fadel because they were both interested in literature. The others, Ahmed and Bilal, they were interested more in politics and the literature of politics, so to speak. But Ghassan and Fadel were interested in. So Ghassan was assassinated by the Mossad, murdered by the Mossad. He was in Beirut. He was only 36. He was going in the morning, taking with him his niece, Lamis Najm. 17 years old she was. And he was going to work when his car exploded, just leaving nothing. It was booby-trapped by the Mossad, But my recommendation for anybody who reads Ghassan's stories to use a small book by Fadel as a companion. Because in that book, Fadel, who after he left to the States, he started coming back to Beirut often. And every time he comes back, Ghassan will be running the newspaper and he will be working with the Arab movement in Beirut all the time, dedicated. But every time he comes they all correspond with each other about literature and what he wrote and so on. And every time Fadel will come to Beirut, he will, Ghassan will just finish, wait for, his 8 o'clock or whatever, when he finishes his work with the newspaper. And he dedicates all his time to Fadel. So they're together outside and they started talking about literature and so on. And that, the last meeting he was supposed to do was, I think, of sometime in July in 1972. And 2 days before, Ghassan was blown up by the Mossad. So my recommendation for all these people who read Ghassan's masterpieces, and I think every Palestinian should, I recommend Ghassan, Fadle's book about Ghassan, a small book called Thus Stories Start, Thus Stories End. That book is so readable, it makes you cry. And it makes you so proud at the same time. That's all I have to say. Oh, one more thing. Going back now to when Fadel was still 16 or 17, I was just starting with the Al-Ra'i people. As usual, I go in the morning to school and I finish and come back later and come to the... And he came to me in the morning. I was standing on our balcony there. And he said, see, take this, just a few pages, pieces of paper, you know. And I read it. I didn't know what he was talking about. I read them. It's about some woman or some family, villages around Safad and so on. Just ordinary life of people. But then I realized it's all about Safad and about Nakba. And how does it feel to be a refugee? What does it mean to the ordinary people? And I couldn't believe. He's a storyteller. It's not like somebody who wants to write because he wants to show off or something. No. He wanted to write because he couldn't but write. I felt so proud. And few days later, he came with another one. So I went to Adnan Faraj, who was the editor, and he immediately published them. So before I left, he published 2 stories already, very readable, Hani. Very readable. It's not something that a kid would write. Very readable. And I heard that after I left, he wrote another 4 or 6 or something. God knows.
Right. I'd like to move to Atif and ask him, as a colleague and an economist, what he thought Fadel is distinguished with in his economics. Was he, or did he have something that distinguishes Fadel as an economist from other economists? This is my first question to Atif. And after we discuss this, I'll move to another topic for Atif. So could you please tell us what your memoirs is on this topic?
Absolutely. I mean, already Dr. Isam has mentioned the distinguished character Fadel was. Very inquisitive, very committed, very creative. And he carried this with him into economics. At the very early stage of mathematical economics, which was still a very nascent, new, budding field, Fadel was into that area. And this was to a great extent strange, so to speak, to many economists who use more the political economy and very little technical and mathematical abilities that they brought with them to the field. But Fadel has given quite a bit of his time and effort to learning mathematics, and he carried this with him to economics. I mean, his first degree was in mathematics, and he came to economics already grounded and with great competence in the use of mathematics and in the use of formulae and evidence and data. But the most distinguishing thing is that he has shown such ability to integrate this mathematics with the teachings of economics, not only in terms of creating greater rigor in the way he expresses this mathematical relationship in economics, but his ability to derive conclusions based on a very logical and integrated system where quantitative economics, not only mathematics, but statistics, would illuminate, inform, and expand the conclusion of economics. But where he made his real distinction is that he has not accepted orthodoxy the way that it was taught. To a great extent, economics as a field was quite mired into orthodoxy. Neoclassical economics was not only a quantitative system, but was a bit of an ideological system. And what's beautiful about Fadle, and what he has contributed quite a bit, is that he did not accept these premises and was always the skeptic, was always willing to entertain alternatives. And one of his seminal contributions was his ability to deviate from the general theory, whether it's Keynesian, monetarist, or trade theory, and raise fundamental questions and offer, what is even the beautiful thing here, alternative way of dealing with things. Let me just take one example. One of the most fundamental equations or thoughts of economics is that trade is a win-win relationship. A trade always is going to expand the benefits to all the trading partners. Well, to a great extent, Fadel felt that this premise needs some adjustment, some qualification. Here is a Palestinian economy totally dominated by a richer economy in Palestine. And why isn't it that the poor economy exposed to a larger and richer market is not benefiting the way the theory would have adjusted? And he found a way to explain this. And the explanation was about something he called path dependence, that there is a wall, a rock in the face of the ability of the poorer countries to avail themselves of all the benefits of trade. And they have to literally move that rock so that they can really benefit. And what would it take to move this rock would be to look at an alternative theory that can explain why these poor countries are not adjusting and not benefiting. And that was really, to a great extent, one of his major contributions. Not only that he was able to demonstrate that why is it that in Italy there is a poor south and a rich north? Why is it in several countries what are quite advanced, like in the United States, a very advanced capitalist economy, yet there is Appalachia, and they're not doing as well. And his position was, to a great extent, if you allow free trade, free movement of people, that situation could get worse instead of better. And the reason for it is that you really have to have some priors. You have to have some higher skills. You have to have higher capital, human capital advanced. You have to literally give the nascent regions a chance to compete, to grow, to experience before they're able to engage in that open trade that, in the ultimate, given their limited capacities, get crushed by it rather than improve. And he fundamentally gave not only a practical demonstration of what these things are, he has also grounded them in a mathematical theory about the asymmetry of information, asymmetry of abilities, asymmetry of power that would ultimately qualify how these countries benefit from trade.
Thank you, Atif. Atif, you worked with him, with Fadel, on several projects, if I recall. In specific, three come to mind. Maybe you can discuss what you did together and what was Fadle's contribution. Let me first refer to your work in Vienna in the 1990s with Fadel at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. Can you tell us what you worked on? What was the project and what was Fadle's contribution?
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate to work with Fadel. I worked with several Arabs there, and honestly, the like of Fadel you'll never find. He's not only committed, he's not only intelligent, he is not witty, he is not a great friend, but he comes to the subject with fresh ideas and with enormous capacities, abilities, and commitment. We worked on something which was very fundamental. The first time I was in Vienna in the first part of the 1980s, as you know, Sadat went to Jerusalem and he turned away from the Arab consensus. And there was a meeting to be held in Egypt under the auspices of the League of Nations, League of Arab Nations, and Jam'a al-Arabiya. But what happened is by his going to Jerusalem, the Arab League moved into Tunis, and Egypt would not allow all the studies that were garnered, developed about Arab industrial potential to go with them to Tunis. Fadl and I and a couple of other economists were literally concentrated. We were allowed and put us actually in a resort town in Algeria under the finance of UNIDO to rewrite most of these reports. So Fadl and I wrote literally from scratch 4 or 5 country reports that not only studied the anatomy of failure of the industrial sector of these countries, but also a real thorough understanding of the challenges, the capacities. But what distinguished Fadl here too again is that he offered credible solutions. I mean, one thing we both came to agree about is that industrialization is very sensitive to the size of the market. I mean, if you have the Arab states, which each one of them is too small, too fragmented, the market is too constrained, the chances of any industrial activity that depends on economies of scope and scale is impossible. So to a great extent, what we try to do to see if we were to reconfigure the Arab markets in a different way, and there was a mathematical study by 2 economists, Chenery and Taylor, that showed that if you look at manufacturing value added, the best explanatory variable is the square of population. Why the square of population? Because it's a proxy about the size of the market. So we studied every Arab country's chance of industrialization as it exists in the fragmented situation, and as it could be if we were to combine them so that that square of population would get multiplied. And we were able to demonstrate that the manufacturing value added that Arab countries can together contribute is literally multiples of what each one can.
Atif, your second experience with Fadel was when you assumed a leadership position at ESCO, the Economic, Social and Cultural
Social and Economic Commission
in Western Asia.
Yeah.
You invited Fadel to join you, and you worked on certain projects at ESCO. Can you tell us about that and what was Fadel's contribution?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, one thing one should ask, why is it that everywhere I went, I wanted Fadel next to me? I mean, there was a very good reason. Fadel always contributes. I mean, one thing you can count on Fadel is that he doesn't waste time. He is a engine of efficiency and creativity. So to a great extent, part of the things we were working on in the Esqua region was to what extent Esqua should remain only Western Asia. Why is it only Al Jazeera Al Arabiya, the Arab Peninsula, and the Fertile Crescent? Why can't we expand it a little bit? Go so that Egypt was always part of Esqua, but we wanted to go to North Africa. We wanted to a great extent to see how can we weave together an economic front, so to speak, an economic mass that could come from the full Arab area, the Arab free trade area, the Arab coordinated investment. We have a strong feeling and evidence to show that as we move ahead, our Arabic economic success is thwarted by the state of disintegration and fragmentation. And the issue here, what would it take to bring this Arab together? Is it just purely agreement? Is it just that we are singing the praise of our past and a common language and a common geography? We were really interested in seeing to what extent we could invest this capital of common culture and language into also common interests and an economic thing. And remember, this is the 80s, and 79 was a very special year, the year in which, Egypt was getting out, but at the same time, the oil prices hit the new highs, and there was incredible wealth. The issue and challenge for Fadel and most of us is how do we translate this financial surplus into an economic surplus, and what would it take? And Fadel was also a committed person that believed that it's not democracy that brings this, but it is an openness. It's the way we recognize the incredible talents and the human wealth that the Arab people come, but these people remain thwarted, remain constrained, because our regimes have not really been able to be open enough to integrate, to use, to mobilize this fantastic one. And he felt to a great extent that to bring people back to the region, bring the brains so together, it takes that a commitment and a set of policies that recognize these constraints, these militating factors, these murbikat and these problems that made us very much unable to bring these people back and bring the talents back and bring the ingenuity and recognize.
May I just add something here, or
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's about Fadel. Actually, when you look at his work, you find that he doesn't fit with the modern way of. He's an economist, he's a mathematician, he's like the old scholars, where all things to him, all fields of knowledge interconnect with each other. And one thing he says, which I saw in his memoirs, which is really something, after the Oslo, he realized what Oslo was an unmitigated disaster. It was a real blow to everything that the Palestinians have worked for. And he said, I started hating myself. And he went away and he said, I found my only escape is in mathematics. I started reading mathematics because I want to know what mathematics is. And after going through that, he went through studies and books and all that. He discovered that it has been proven that mathematics is not, you don't prove mathematics, you don't construct it. It is there, you just discover it. Yeah. And that gave him such a freedom. So he felt free.
We're coming to that when we discuss his university education. Yeah. Now, Atif, one last thing. Fadel didn't just work on Arab issues. He also utilized his specialization in economics and mathematics to provide consultancy and advice on Palestinian issues. And he played a major role in the establishment of an institute which continues to exist and be productive in Ramallah, Palestine, namely MAS, or the Palestinian Research Institute for Economic Policies, which he directed for a number of years. Now, you worked with him in MAS. Can you tell us about what you two did and what was Fadle's contribution in that specific issue, case?
As you know, Hani, defining characteristic of Fadel is his commitment to his people and his strong desire to serve them and to put his education in service of their things. He felt that the economic relations that define the way Palestine is integrated unwillingly, so to speak, into the Israeli economy has had incredible costs. And his position was, how can we extricate the Palestinian economy and polity from the stranglehold of the Israelis? So to a great extent, much of his work has been devoted to see to what extent can the Palestinian follow a course and an economic strategy and policy that guarantees their economic self-reliance and independence to serve better and best the Palestinian interests. So his work was basically about the asymmetrical relationship that governed the way Palestine relates to the Israeli economy. He felt that one of the most important strategies that could work would be to reweave the relationship with the Arab depth, which their natural depth, and the lesser accommodation they have with Israel and a more relationship re-established with the Arab market is the best option for the Palestinians, and work to see and demonstrate how this can bring benefit and how could it be done.
Thank you, Atif. The memoirs of Fadel open with the following passage. I am an Arab nationalist from Safad, and life has taught me how to love the homeland, but it did not teach me how to protect it. In my relentless strive to overcome my predicament, I had no choice but to throw myself into any adventure that came my way, promising salvation. However, after going through a few unsuccessful ones, I learned, and I'm still learning, not to commit myself to any but to three: the power of literature, the beauty of mathematics, and the tenacity of hope. One, and more often two, of these three have helped me survive difficult times, and I've had to go through many of these times since I was 9 years of age. In April 48, the Haganah, a Jewish Zionist paramilitary force, overran Safad and expelled its Palestinian Arab population from their homes and country. Fadel was then 10 years old. In their diaspora, the Naqib's father, mother, and 6 siblings, Usama, Lamis, Isam, Asma, Fadel, and Rabi'a, took refuge in Damascus. Unlike other Arab countries, Syria granted them the same rights as its citizens: free choice as to where they can live, free education, and equal employment opportunities in the public and private sectors. In Damascus, Fadel found himself living in two intermingled worlds, a world of the future and a world of the past. The latter was the outcome of a great Arab Islamic civilization that extended from the 7th to the 13th centuries and viewed by them as their golden age. It was followed by a long dark age. Thus, to quote Fadel, the perception of the past was contradictory in nature, unquote. Similarly, the perception of the future were also double-natured. The Middle Ages in Europe were dark ages and were succeeded by the Renaissance, Enlightenment, and Industrial Revolution, ending in the modern age. However, European societies divided in the 20th century into Western, Eastern, and other political models that clashed with each other. Living in this environment, the young Fadel was faced with three choices: political Islam, represented by the Muslim Brotherhood; communism, represented by the Communist Party; and Arab nationalism, represented by the Ba'ath Arab Socialist Party and the Arab Nationalist Movement. When making his choices, Fadel in his youth and in his adult life invoked two criteria to select the path he should follow. It would have to offer an ideology that allows him to exercise his freedom of thought, and a policy that leads to Palestinian liberation and right of return. On that basis, he rejected the philosophy of Islamism, which did not separate between politics and religion, and raised the slogan, "Islam is the solution." It did not leave much freedom to its followers to use rules of rationality as their guide. Fadel also disliked the hostility of the Muslim Brotherhood toward Arab patriotic regimes and their collaboration with Arab reactionaries and foreign colonial powers. As for communism, while Fadel utilized some of the Marxist concepts in economic analysis, he refused to accept the claim by Marxists that their teachings offer the only tools capable of analyzing economic and social issues. In that respect, they did not offer much from the Islamists. They did not differ much from the Islamists. To add, the positions of the Arab Communist parties on Palestinian and other issues of concern to Arab societies in the 1940s and 1950s, such as their support of the UN Partition Resolution, recognition of Israel, and opposition to popular Arab policies of Third World non-alliance movement in the Cold War, and their servitude to the Soviet Union, led Fadel to believe that communism will constrain and constrict his freedom of thought and create a distance between him and Palestine. And therefore, these were sufficient reason to not join the Communist Party. His exclusion of Islamism and communism left him with the only choice he felt he had, namely being an Arab nationalist. To Fadel, it was the natural thing, the normal thing to do. At the age of 10, one day Fadel surprised himself and his family by taking a large piece of paper, writing at the top Palestine, a daily newspaper, and filling the paper with sarcastic remarks aimed at Arab kings and presidents, accusing them of betraying Palestine. He says, "I discovered the power of writing. Writing defines who we are." To write, he had to read. While still in high school, he was enmeshed in reading the classics in Arabic literature and the translations to Arabic of the classics in Russian and French literature. In Damascus, he found other young Palestinians who shared his views. They formed a group called the Literature and Life Band, issued pamphlets and wrote papers. 3 of them played major roles in Fadle's life: Ahmed Khalifa, Bilal al-Hassan, and Ghassan Kanafani. They became friends for life and acclaimed writers. After graduating from high school, Fadel joined the Arab nationalist movement and worked full-time in their weekly magazine, Al-Rai, or The Opinion. He became the editor of the culture and literature pages. A new stage in the life of Fadel began in '59 when he left Damascus to the US to study engineering, though he had no interest in the field. A degree in engineering, he thought, would be an insurance to obtain a job and an acceptable income when he returns to the Arab world that would allow him to pursue his interest in literature and journalism. Fadel moved between several colleges and universities in Washington and Oregon. By the 3rd year, he learned to love and excel in math and mathematical economics, to the point where he was using math books for bedtime reading. No wonder he completed 3 degrees in these 2 fields: a Bachelor of Mathematics, a Bachelor of Economics, and a Master's of Mathematical Economics. He then enlisted in Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, Canada, and obtained a PhD degree in econometrics. What explains Fadel's attachment to math? His realization that math, unlike other academic traditions, was eternal and immutable, caused him to fall in a love relationship with mathematics, since it constituted the backbone of his professional career in teaching and research. In time, he realized there is a parallel in mathematics and the sciences on the one hand, and literature and the humanities on the other hand, and he learned to live with both. One last remark relates to the tenacity of hope. Fadel believed a Palestinian, by definition, must be a Platonist, where actual things are copies of transcendent ideas, and that these ideas are the objects of true knowledge, accessible by recollection. Platonism infuses hope and is the road to Palestine. Isam, do you have anything else to add to Isam's?
No, I was just going to continue what I wrote first, that he found, and he started hating himself after Oslo. And then when he went into math and he discovered the beauty of math, that is, math actually pre-existed, you discover it, you don't construct it. It gave him such freedom that he started looking to other subjects, from math, going to literature, going to philosophy, and so on. But more than that, he felt freed from shame. He felt empowered. And few months later or something, all of a sudden, he was all the time outside Palestine. All of a sudden, he came with an invitation to come and join in establishing an institute, Palestinian Institute for Economic Studies in Palestine, in Ramallah. And his wife, who is an engineer, committed Arab nationalist like himself, highly cultured and so on, he has a child only a few years old, and his wife, and still she said, yes, we should do that. And he went there. And I think he embarked on one of the biggest challenges to Oslo, the economic challenge. They defied the Arafat regime. They defied, when you read how they built the institute, how much effort they went into defining the mission, the construction, the organization, and so on. One of their big worries is to make sure that the Sultan doesn't interfere. Not just that the Israelis don't interfere, but that the Sultan doesn't interfere. You know? And I think what they did there is a monumental job.
In conclusion, I'd like three of us to actually discuss the personality of Fadel and what we recall about Fadel the most. Maybe we can start with you, Isam.
Yeah, I mean, when he came he came to me first. I went and we brought him from the station and so on and so forth. He was with his friend. His name was what's his name? I forgot his name. Mansour, Nasser Mansour. They're lifelong friends, and they're still kept friends all the way, you know. And none of them spoke one word of English. They would sit with me in the dormitory, and they wouldn't say. They don't even hardly can say yes and no. That's all. So you could imagine the kind of challenge that you were facing, because he got himself so absorbed with the Arab movement in Damascus, writing novels and staying with them all the way till morning, about publishing and so on and so forth. My father eventually pushed him. He said, you go and you study and get yourself a job first before you end up just doing that, you know. So when he came, he had to start from scratch. And really, that was heroic. That was heroic. He registered it took him to Yakima, I think. Yakima is a junior college. And there he started enjoying the school, because what he enjoyed was how they teach him how to talk, how to speech and writing and English. And they started giving him high marks for English, although he still cannot really express himself in English, but because he has ideas, he knows how to tell a story and so on. And then I think he registered to study engineering. I used to have a very good, generous allowance because I was a graduate student here. So I was able to help him a little bit to cover his expenses after all the money he had then there. And he did not like this engineering thing. He did not like the what do you call it? He liked the math, but he did not like the engineering side. So all of a sudden he disappeared from the radar totally, and I couldn't know where he is. He did not want to take my money or anything. He just didn't want. He disappeared because he was unhappy with himself. He failed.
I saw him at the time.
Yeah.
One thing he did with his friend who joined him is that he started working in the summer months.
They did. But before that, what I'm saying, yeah, I know that's a very long story. But before that, so I went to him and I found that he changed school from one university to the other. And instead of taking engineering, he changed that and he went to the other subject. And from there, then it's a long story, really.
So, in your opinion, Fadel faced a lot of challenges when he went to...
Unbelievable.
And he had the personality and strength.
Yeah. He has to learn the language.
Face it.
He has to learn. He has to get a degree for himself so that he can work. And he has to satisfy his own yearning for literature. He never let go of that. He never let go of literature. You know, so everything he used, eventually he managed to do these three loves of his life. You know, in the end, they all converged together. But that took a long time. And he didn't mind. He wasn't there really to get degrees. He didn't mind. He just wanted to do what he wanted really to do. And I think they did marvelously in the end.
Atif, you have something to say about your memories of Fadel?
Yeah, one thing that was very distinctive about Fadel, he has such a good wit about him. I mean, he is witty. I mean, I remember 2 or 3 stories which are very funny. And they're telling about his personality. We were at a meeting with UNCTAD, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. And Fadle was writing a book with one of the top Egyptian economists, Hani Khairuddin, and I was invited to be part of that project. And we stayed in a hotel in Morocco, in Casablanca. And the joke was when he took a shower, we typically, the Arab world, would tell people that God be generous with you. Yin'am alayk. And he said, no, don't tell me this. You should tell me, Abdullah as-Salami, thank you, God, for keeping me safe. I said, why? Why is this? He said, the bathtub is so high. I had to climb out of it, and I'm all wet. And no matter how much I tried, I was slipping back. So it was a great feat to be safe and get out. So don't say, Yin'am alayk, say, Abdullah as-Salami. Say, God saves you of this. The other thing that was also quite interesting about him is that he knew that mathematics in economics is not literally natural. And he recalls a story of a mathematical economist who was in physics and then turned into economics. His name was Ozawa, and he was to a great extent one of his heroes. And Ozawa was asked by his colleagues when he was teaching physics, that Ozawa, we look at your work in economics and you're using more sophisticated math that you used in physics. He said, why are you surprised? He says, well, of course we're surprised. He says, no, you shouldn't be surprised. In physics, you're constrained by reality. In economics, you're constrained by your imagination. And to him, it was a telling story that one of the beauty about mathematics and economics, it has wider latitudes. It allows you to conceive of all possible worlds where the reality is only a special case. And I love this statement, reality is a special case.
Thank you, Atif. Myself, I came to know Fadel in 1970. I was at the University of Calgary at the time doing my PhD. And Fadel joined us in the Department of Political Science for a year at that university. And what we did, 3 of us, Fadel, myself, and Asad Abdurrahman, who was doing also his PhD in political science, we rented an apartment and we lived in that apartment. We cooked, we ate, we drank, and we went to university and enjoyed a year of the company of between the 3 of us. And since then, a relationship, a very close relationship of friendship and appreciation of Fadel developed until his death recently. What I loved about Fadel are 2 things. His total devotion to the Palestinian cause. And the second is his sharp intellect. An amazing person. Remember, he was youthful around 16 years of age, 15 to 16 years of age, where he read the classics in Russian, French, and Arab culture, Arab literature. Imagine a 15-year-old boy reading the classics in Russian literature or French literature. That was Fadel. He had a mind that absorbed and never was satisfied, always wanted more and more. Literature in his early life and math and economics in his later years. He was a great asset to the Arab world, and he's a great loss when we lost him recently. I do appreciate your contributions. I want to thank you and thank Arabic Hour for helping us organize this session. And good luck. And hopefully we'll have another session about Fadle later on. Thank you.
Thank you. And just only mention that whatever we did, we paid very little of our debt we have to him, and that a real appreciation of his contribution would be for the listeners to read his memoir that will be published soon.
If I were to say one more final word, it's the 2 lines from his friend Mahmoud Darwish. لقد تعلمت كل الحروف وفككتها كي أركب حرفا واحدا اسمه الوطن. I learned all the letters that there are, and I deconstructed each one of them in order to construct one letter called my homeland.
Yeah.
I think that's Fadel.
That also reflects Fadel's personality and line of thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.